Hey all, my name is Alexia Locklear, and I'm going to be sharing with you 5 different theories on substance dependency, particularly why people choose to use substances. This concept of substance abuse is a controversial topic dating back to the early 1900s. Many ideas have been discussed to explain this phenomenon. Many people, especially those who have a loved one who is chemically dependent, cannot wrap their brains around why someone may continue to engage in such destructive behavior. Science and individuals have attempted to understand and explain addiction for quite some time. So what is a theory again? You may be familiar with Darwin's theory of evolution. A theory is a system of ideas intended to explain something, especially one based on general principles independent of one thing to be explained. During the Industrial Revolution era, folks wanted to create an explanation to why people overdrank. For centuries, alcohol consumption was considered a natural part of daily life, but once alcohol became free-flowing and inexpensive, it was also proven to be problematic. The moral theory arose to explain this epidemic. The moral theory views addictive substance use and the behavior as sinful or morally wrong. An individual who begins using is a bad person with no moral compass. They're making a choice to use with lack of regard or willpower. Within the moral theory, the substance user is viewed as evil and faulted for their sinful behavior, allowing no room for rehabilitation. Treatment, however, comes more likely in the form of punishment, with the goal to rid society of the moral decrepit. Within this theory, rehabilitation could only take place as the user makes a choice to stop the use and realign their moral belief system with God. Only at this point would an individual be cured of addiction. Present day, the moral view is mostly a historical theory and not commonly found in treatment facilities. As we have gained more information and research on substance use and theories, we have moved away from moral and more towards a disease theory. In 1935, Alcoholics Anonymous was founded based on the statement that addiction is a progressive and chronic disease. AA remains aligned with the moral theory, though, in the sense that AA believes in looking to a higher power for assistance and remaining to their sobriety and abstinence. Achievement in sobriety is assessed or achieved by the 12-step program. However, AA shifted responsibility away from the addict as morally deficient to suffering from an illness. Within this big shift in thinking, American Medical Association recognized alcoholism as a disease in 1966. This then allowed for substance abuse to be scientifically studied. These studies brought forth the development of new theoretical models for treatment known as the disease or medical theory. The notion of the disease model has been thought of in a linear terms. The addiction follows a trend, worsening symptoms and hitting a rock bottom, and then an upward path to recovery while remaining absent from the substance use. Many models have developed from this, not necessarily moving in a linear fashion. Some, like Glatt's expansion on Jenkins phases, moves towards a V method, where the disease progresses downward on the left and recovering upward on the right, where rock bottom is in the middle or the bottom of the V, as well as indicated on other locations of feeling like you've possibly hit rock bottom or possible places where intervention can be made. The idea is still widely used in treatment today, though through the experience of this theory, this does not always hold up to be true. What defines as someone's rock bottom? How low does someone really need to hit before they are ready to discard their drug of choice and negative behavior that follows with the use in order to begin moving towards that upward recovery fashion? In traditional disease theory, the disease of addiction rested on the assumption that substance was a primary disorder and not an underlying cause of other psychological or moral issues. Today, the medical theory is the most prevalent of all treatment models for substance abuse disorders. With more attention from the medical research community, research has provided evidence that substance use disorders is indeed comparable to a disease. The evolution of this information took a positive turning point in 1980 with a publication that categorized the term alcoholism in two categories: alcohol abuse and alcohol dependency. These categories are still used today. The pathway to sobriety is not linear. In fact, it's really much more of a roller coaster with its peaks and drops and twists and turns. Many addicts may need to reach multiple rock bottoms before they may feel the need for a turning point. This may be the same. One person's rock bottom is not the same for another person's rock bottom, and what you think might be a rock bottom might not be for somebody. But once sobriety is reached, relapse may occur, they may drop out, they may be sober again, sobriety may continue many, many times, and then followed by a relapse before maybe a final sobriety or not at all. Due to this approach, for remission, it's multidimensional. Recovery is based on abstinence from their drug of choice. Initial treatment begins with a detox program, followed by counseling, lifestyle, behavioral, and attitude changes, and support groups. After abstinence, counseling is followed, understanding the underlying issues that have caused one to use or that have been created from using, like shame or guilt that comes from letting your family down or being upset or being disappointed within yourself. Or once a feeling of self-control has been established, one may feel that they can control their using. This often happens. It's like, oh, now I'm in charge, I can handle. Relapse often occurs. Some limitations of the disease theory are feeling the individual is disempowered by the illness label, or one has no control over their actions. The medical approach believes that substance use disorder to be a lifelong, chronic, and possible relapsing condition. Therefore, you can never actually be cured, but you can remain in remission, or, as said most often, I'm in recovery, even if it has been 50 years since you last used. As the view on substance use disorders has shifted, other theories have risen as complementary theories to the medical theory model. Research involving intergenerational studies, twin studies, adoption studies, biological research, as well as search for genetic marker of substance dependency. These studies are an attempt to better understand the genetic theory. Studies of families, adoption, and twins have demonstrated that genetic factors contribute between 50 to 60% of the variance risk for alcoholism and 45 to 79% risk for illicit drug use. Evidence from research on twins reveals several childhood risk factors that are predictive of substance abuse in their adolescence. Adoption studies have also examined the influence of genetics and environment, going back to that day-old question, nature versus nurture. If addiction is a disease, then could it or should it be genetically transmitted? Research has proven a genetic association from parent to offspring though the exact influence remains unclear. Genetics may increase the risk of dependency. Children of addicts are 8 times more likely to develop an addiction. An addiction is due 50% to genetics and genetic predisposition and 50% to poor coping skills, says some researchers. However, many factors influence when to engage in substance use. Increase in exposure, family dynamics, environmental or social issues, prenatal drinking, poor coping skills, personality types, inhibitions, peer pressure, social norms around the use, trauma, the list goes on. These linked with predispositions can create a stronger dependency. The decision to continue to use a drug may involve a complex combo of both social and biological factors. Genetic influence is important on how effects are experienced. The sensitivity to the drug may contribute to the positive or negative effects of the drug. For example, one may try alcohol and not metabolize it well, so they get sick and therefore not enjoying and not continuing to engage in the experience, while others may not be able to metabolize at all, not feeling the effects, therefore not caring to partake. My grandmother, for example, who has a PhD, very educated woman, once shared with me that in college she unknowingly ate marijuana and felt extremely out of control and out of her body. Hating the experience because she likes to be in control, she never attempted to try again. While another may try, their try, and their genetics allow them to love the euphoric feeling found within the substance, and these experiences all play a role into deciding or desiring to use or not use again. So all kind of breaks down back into your genetics. This may also be in combination of social factors, acceptance of peers, social norms, general attitudes about substance at hand, as well as personality factors. The 5-factor evaluates the risks based on personality traits. The greatest factors of genetics hypothetically occurs in the process from the first use to the substance use disorder development. A variety of genetic influence factors create a predisposition towards substance use disorders, as well as can assist into playing a role into temporary remission as tolerance changes over time, or organ damage leads to illness that may motivate the user to stop. In combination with environmental factors, this may also influence the person to stop. Finding associations between genetic substance use will shed more light on risk factors. While the psychology of why people do what they do is still a huge factor in examining risk. The likes of psychologists such as Pavlo, Norndijk, Watson, and Skinner have shed light on the idea of led behavioral leading to the environmental perspectives. Behavioral theories have an additional role in assisting us understand why people use. The behavioral theory has produced 3 models of behavioral control in studies such as the Pavlovian approach, in approaching environmental stimuli associated with reward. For example, social norm in regards to a kid comes into a new town, his family moves, he wants to fit in with the cool kids, and they offer him to smoke marijuana. They smoke it, and in that goal to try to fit in. Next would be the goal-directed action, which is repeating of the stimulation that leads to increased activity. With the same example, a kid then still wants to fit in, still wants to gain that, so he continues the use of smoking marijuana to keep the image and to keep fitting in, which then leads to habit, continued behavior regardless of consequence. Now the enjoyment has begun and no desire to change regardless of the risk of breaking the law or health concerns in regards to smoking. Social learning theory, published by Albert in 1977, forms parts of the behavioral theory about substance abuse. This states that genetic and social cultural factors are thought to predispose an individual to our influence experimentation with and substance use. Substance use is a function of the person and environmental interactions. This includes a focus on positive norms, expectations, value systems, cognitive factors, and modeling from family and peers. Experimentation might be viewed as a function of undesirable behaviors. Though a young person may try alcohol through peer pressure and may not continue, but the initial behavior was their coping method. Learning responses in current circumstances were all overwhelmed. While continued use is generally seen as dependent on positive experience, research is being done to understand whether continued use may have to do with the chemical effects on the body, or the chemical effects and the reinforcement of the behavior. This may be seen as an opiate addict attempting to disconnect with their emotions, and the drug provided the response that they were seeking, therefore wanting to continue to achieve that feeling. Drug preference is more likely to be a function of availability and affordability. Recovering involves behavioral change to break the clinical pattern of substance abuse and may include replacing the rewards gained by the continued use. On theory, on the way to break the habit is to present the drug to an individual until negative effects resolve. This is a very dangerous approach. Another way to break habit is to introduce the drug selectively until the user learns over time not to respond in a habitual manner or is desensitized. Studies have also shown this treatment works, yet it still remains controversial. A final form of breaking a habit is replacing the habit, switching drugs. This can be a positive switch, like from an opiate user to becoming a rock climber or smoker into a yogi, or sometimes not so healthy. In AA, you will often see many previous addicts stop their drug of choice but picked up drinking tons of coffee and chain smoking cigarettes or overeating. This can also be using one drug and switching to another, or a dependency on a relationship or sex or addiction. I have a friend that says, when he stops drinking, he starts smoking, and when he stops smoking, he starts drinking. He kind of picks up one for the other. But the goal with this treatment method would be to switch to a healthier one, like for example, picking up an activity like exercise, or becoming a little bit more spiritual, or focusing on education, or a healthy hobby. Personality, motivation, and habit are important. A major disadvantage of the behavioral approach is that intergenerational family and biological factors are not directly addressed. The user's whole world is dominated by the drug, so an environmental factor, friends, behavior, mindset, all of those need to change in order to support sobriety. Long-lasting change requires a shift in family patterns, attention, and the biological changes involved, as well as in genetic differences in addicts. Though the theory cannot answer all questions on why one uses, it provides insight to the behavioral and social conditions associated with that behavior. A conversation exists about the behavior theory and has also emerged in regards to social and cultural factors. Thoughts and attitudes about drinking and substance use vary from culture to culture, and these greatly affect the context of consumption. So, social culture factors is considered in the theory of addiction. Social cultural theory is all affected by gender, race, status, and socialization. Social factors can contribute to the first substance use. Factors that assist in deference of abuse include bonding, goal direction, monitoring from family, healthy peer groups, religion, other social processes like participating in rewarding activities. Culture can tend to be an influence in the rise and use of abuse, as well as avoidance of abuse. One big factor is generational forgetting, involved in the fading use of current drugs and introducing old drugs. This is a cultural belief that is attributed to the use or lack of use, or maybe the pressure to fit in. Drug subculture theory was first developed based on the framework of deviant acts. However, drug use trends indicate that in today's society, behavior is a factor in regards to ethnicity, gender, and social class. The cohort effects are observed when use rates increase along with attitudes, beliefs about various drugs are increased or decreased over time. Replacing a pro-drug social setting with non-using peers is an important goal in recovery for social and cultural tolerance. But this may be a limiting factor to maintaining recovery, as well as assessing and avoiding use to begin with. Within the model of social cultural, the broader system must be addressed in order for an individual to change. Otherwise, the chances for relapse are very high. So you have it. These are the 5 theories on reasons people may choose to use or become addicted to drugs. The goal here is to continue research in order to better define relapse prevention. I hope this was informative and that you will share the knowledge with others, for knowledge is power, and the more that we are informed, the better choices we can make. Until next time.